Hi, I'm Cody Alexander of MatchQuarters. Welcome to another episode of the ArtofX show. Today, we are going to be talking about keeping it simple versus a running quarterback. I think at every level, what we're seeing is quarterbacks are becoming the central figure of an offense, and they also have to be able to run. So in the NFL, we're going to break down the Buccaneers versus the Eagles week 6 game from last year and kind of go through some things philosophically and what they did to mitigate some of the risk of Jalen Hurts running all over them. They had one of the best run games in the NFL last year, the Eagles, and the Buccaneers did an excellent job of kind of keeping him contained, but while also defending the RPO systems that he has around him. So coverage in front, how that kind of comes together, that's what we're going to be talking about on the show today. So let's talk about the modern QB. You need to be able to pass and run. It used to be, look, we wanted these big, tall statues. They sat in the pocket, they deciphered the defense, and then they just, with their rocket arms and laser point accuracy, they kind of pick the defense apart. I think we've kind of moved past that. Anytime that you have a quarterback that can run, you're adding an advantage to the offense, and you're making a disadvantage for the defense. You really, in honesty, the NFL, with as much as the middle of the field closes they play single high coverage, the offense wants to run the ball with the quarterback. Now, you're not going to give that guy, 40-50 million dollars and then just go run quarterback power every single play. That's not what this is about. But being able to move him around and run away from the pass rush, you're allowing that guy to then become a creator. And anytime you can create, that's when you're going to get explosive plays. So platform throwers with limited mobility, they're a dying breed. Okay. This would be like your Tom Brady's, right? Your Peyton Manning's. Those guys, they're always going to be successful. But if you are kind of just like a regular quarterback, you can't really move that well. You're kind of in the middle of the road. You're going to really struggle in today's game, because what offenses want now is somebody that can create plays, right? With their feet, especially. As football evolves to more of a space sport, running ability is important. The quarterback has to be a thrower and a runner. And that's what we're seeing in today's game on defense and on offense, is this hybridization of players. You have to be able to add value. If you're not adding value, then what are you really doing? That's why we're seeing receivers who normally would line up outside. What are we doing? We're moving them inside to play this power slot, right? This big, bulky receiver who can run. He can match up with some of these smaller nickel corners, and they can also line them up outside. You can run jet sweeps. You've got to be able to do more as a player in order to play in today's game. 5 quarterbacks in the NFL last year all eclipsed the 400-yard mark. Now, if you're looking at that, you're like, well, 400 yards, that's not that much. Why are we not talking about a 1,000-yard runner? Well, because you're not going to run the quarterback and expose him to that many hits in the NFL. But look what we've got. Allen with Buffalo had almost 900 yards. Hurts, who we're going to talk about today with the Eagles, had over 800 yards. Lamar Jackson had 767 yards. Mahomes, one of the best passers in the NFL, had almost 500 yards of rushing. So we're looking at it, and these young QBs are bringing a running element to the passing game as well, because now you can't just wholesale blitz or wholesale rush these guys, because they can make it with their feet. So you have to be able to then mitigate some of this risk on defense, and I felt like the Buccaneers had a really good plan when they did this. Running the QB changes the math, and you're going to hear, like, defensive coordinator Dave Aranda talks all the time about changing the math. You're going to hear this a lot coming up, is how can we change the math? Where are we at a disadvantage, and how can we flip that on its head? The NFL is dominated by middle of the field close coverages. The quarterback player is in the middle of the field and he's deep, right? Well, that's a conflict. And how can we take advantage of that? Even if it isn't on every down running the quarterback wholesale, getting him that 1,500 yards, right? That 1,000 yards, kind of those video game numbers that we used to have when we played NCAA football. Okay. But being able to have him run as just a threat of being able to run changes the way the defense has to structure itself. It can't just pin its ears back and just go after you. The QB players deep in coverage, that's +1 running ability for the offense, because now with the quarterback ability to run, you have an extra blocker. So let's say that you're running, the NCAA offense, what everybody's running, the Y-off offense. Well, you now have 7 blockers, right? Because that quarterback and it is now a running threat. So you have the running back, the tight end, and you have the 5 offensive linemen. That changes the math for the offense. So the sport is already leaning into offensive dominance. So having the running quarterback, it's really putting a lot of pressure on these defenses at the NFL level to kind of, hey, we've got to change the way that we're doing things. We've got to be able to do a little bit more kind of these hybrid ideas of, we've got to kind of have odd spacing, even spacing. We can't always be pressuring the quarterback. We've got to now play too high with single high. We have what I call passive pressure. You've got to be able to apply pressure, but it has to be able to be safe. It has to be able to, 1, not allow the quarterback to run free, 2, add coverage advantage back to the defense, and 3, fit the actual front so that you can stop the run. Addition of RPOs spreads the defense thin. So here we are in an age where the rules are aligned for the offense. We now have running quarterbacks. The RPO and the spread is now in the NFL. Defenses at the NFL are at such a disadvantage. You can't just sit there and say, well, we're just going to play cat coverage, right? We're just going to play cover 1. We're just going to sit here in the middle field close. We're going to load the box and then just good luck, because what we found out is that doesn't necessarily work. Right? That offenses are going to find a way. The great, I talked about it a couple of weeks ago with the Chiefs, a lot of too high shells, a lot of underneath passing. They're going to have to come out and do some things. Now, the Chiefs came out in I formation to start out their preseason. Is that what they're probably going to run every down? They're going to kind of pull out a, hey, we're now going back to 21 personnel. I don't know. Will we get more downhill runs from them? Probably, because that's how you're going to attack those too high shells. So you're going to force defenses to kind of play their card. So we're in an era that's really interesting. Defenses are kind of feeling their way through the dark, kind of trying to figure out how we're going to do this. And then offenses they're kind of leaning into this offensive dominance, this space sport. They're kind of spreading out these defenses and taking advantage. I call it spatial Darwinism. Offense is supposed to create space. Defense is supposed to constrain space. Those who are going to be able to adapt from this era as we go through, those are the ones that are going to survive. We're already kind of seeing a changing of the guard, not only offensively, but defensively as well, right? The ideas that have been able to work for the past decade, they're getting cycled out, and now we've got these new ideas. We're playing more too high shells. We're playing around with some of these nickel and penny fronts, right? These 2, 4, 5 fronts and defensive structures, and these 5-1 defensive structures. And people are kind of playing around with these light box, and how can we do this? And so that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. Soccer, NBA, hockey, all have become more skill-based sports. That's what we're seeing in the NFL, right? The old guys, we used to be able to have receivers run across the middle, and football's changing more to 7-on-7. That is the case, and it's becoming more of a skill-based sport. That is the evolution of sport that we're seeing. I wrote about it in Hybrids, is that these spatial sports, as everything gets wider, you have to be more skilled in what you're doing. You have to add value. You can't just be a square peg. You kind of have to be kind of like putty. You've got to kind of mold to what you have to be able to do, and not necessarily a jack of all trades, but a master of none. And you not everybody has to be dynamic, because let's be honest, you're not going to have all 22 of your starters being dynamic guys. But what you have to be able to have in the modern game, whether it's offense or defense, is players that add value in something else. If I'm a linebacker, I have to be able to also cover. If I'm a DB, I now have to be able to play near the box, but I also have to be able to play coverage. Even corners now with the wide zone, they're going to be asked to tackle more. And that's something that hasn't been around in the NFL, right? And, it's the old Alex Gibbs adage. Why do we not block a corner? Because he's a coverage defender. He has to prove himself that he's going to tackle before we actually go and block him. So if you think about it in terms of math, Okay. If that guy can't tackle, you're playing with 10. And so now the offense has an even more advantage. And so that's why I think we're seeing more wide zone. We're seeing more of these quick motions because of the eye candy. You're kind of pressing these defensive players into doing more things than they're normally being asked to do. So the spread is one in football, and it's moving it and moving in on the NFL, and it's becoming more and more and more of a kind of a standard practice. These are things that we've been used to at the high school and the college level that now we're having to get used to in the NFL. There's always going to be an adjustment period. And just how I wrote in hybrids, time's a flat circle. Like I mentioned a little bit earlier, with the Chiefs going back to 21 personnel in their preseason game, it's one of those deals where we're going to get cycles. Do I think we're going to go back to Neanderthal ball where it's 3 yards in a cloud of dust? I grew up in Kansas City with Marty Schottenheimer and kind of Marty Ball, where you just, hey man, if we can just get 3 yards in a cloud of dust, we're going to be great. So to me, do I think we're going to go back to that? No. But these hybrid fronts and we're looking more for players that are going to kind of be able, you can say, well, hey, look, they're kind of a linebacker, but they're kind of a DB, or they're kind of a DB, they're kind of a linebacker. Hey, he's kind of a corner, but he can play safety as well. And so what's happening is these hybrid guys, these tweeners, they're getting more of an opportunity because they can do more things. They can play in different positions. I also think it's going to help at the higher levels because it's going to simplify some things. You're going to have to be a better teacher. You can't just be like, look, you're only going to be a third down pass rusher, so only work on hand fighting and pass rush, right? You're seeing it more and more that, hey, we need an every down back, right? Or we're going to have two backs and we're going to rotate them, but you can't just be a passing back because if you're in there, everybody knows we're going to pass, right? So to me, what's happening is players are being asked to do more, but also on the back end, those coaches are going to have to coach. I thought Mike Tomlin in his podcast he did with the Pivot was really good. There's a lot of coaches that are afraid to actually coach, right? They just want players to show up and it's a plug and play. And that's not how it is. I think this generation, more than anything, is really challenging coaches on the why. Why are we doing this? Why have we done this before? What does this drill have to do? Why, right? It's kind of like you're a little kid and they're always asking why. Well, at the end of the day, that makes you a better coach because you have to explain yourself and you can't just sit there and say, well, that's the way we've always done it. So we're getting and evolving a game that is becoming more spatial oriented. The spread is one. It's not going away. And it will be interesting in the next decade to see how that evolves the game. Defending the run still matters. Coverage determines fits in the front. It's not the other way. It used to be, hey, this is the front structure. This is the fit, right? Whatever you're doing, lever, spill, lever, you're boxing things, your spill overlap. It doesn't matter. Whatever you're doing, even odd spacing. It used to be, this is what we are up front. This is how we fit the run. The secondary will figure it out. When I was at Midlothian, that's kind of how we always were at, right? It was like, hey, this is what the front's going to be. This is what we're going to do. And then we called ourselves a trash man because we were just going to pick up wherever there was an issue, right? That's not how the game is working anymore. If you go and you look at the top defensive minds, whether it is at the NFL, the college, or the high school level, they are doing everything coverage first, and then the front is going to reflect what that coverage is going to be. Wherever they are leveraging the secondary, that's where the front structure is then going to leverage itself on the other side. So defending the run with less places more defenders in coverage. That's what we want, right? It's a passing game at every level now. QB run game makes fitting the run more difficult because they have a +1 advantage. They added another notch to their blocking, right? They added another tick. They plussed it. Okay, so it's simple math, right? Analytics has changed the game to rely on early down passing. We're seeing more passing early, which means defenses can't just load the box on early downs and play for third down, saying, okay, look, if we can stop the run on first, we'll get them in a second and long, and now it's a passing down, right? And then now we just defend the pass for the next 2 downs. That's not how it works anymore. Offenses are not afraid to go pass, right? They're not afraid to pass it on first down, especially with RPO, especially with play action. Getting that defense to suck up on the run because, right, first down's a run down. Okay, these 50-50 downs, especially on these early downs, these first downs and then 2nd to 6, 2nd to 7, it's really important for these defenses to then be able to kind of play in these mixed downs and be able to establish a run while also having this coverage. And you can see how that spreads the defense thin, right? Kirby Smart, I thought, had a great comment about it, going over about, hey, last spring, you have to be able to stop the run in order to defend the pass. And if you can do it with less numbers, that means your pass coverage is just going to be that much better. And yes, they had a bunch of freaks. Obviously, if you watch the NFL draft, you saw that. But that philosophy of, can we cancel gaps with less? And that's why I've always talked about, if you go to cautious aggression, you go to anchor points, I've always talked about being able, we talk about 7-man spacing, right? 8-man, 9-man. Being able to fit the box with 6 defenders and then these 2 half defenders to create that 7. I've always talked about that and how you can kind of cancel gaps on the interior to be able to do that. So if you go and you look at anchor points and you look at how I fit the run in the box and things of that nature, where, and I learned this from Phil Bennett when I was at Baylor, is being able to have these half defenders on the edges to create that 7-man spacing. And then how are you kind of moving numbers within the box to cancel that out? And I really feel like that is where we're getting, right? And I call that a fluid front, right? Is where you don't have to sit there and hold a gap. I don't have to have these big, massive human beings that are holding the gap. As everybody's getting smaller and quicker because of the pass rush, right? You're going to kind of have to change the way you structure things. I can't ask a guy who used to be 350-pound nose that's now kind of a 298, 300-pound guy that's more of an athlete than he is a workhorse, right? I can't just ask him, hey, man, you get that double team, you can't move. Or, hey, if your guy goes away, you can't move. Right? You got to hold that gap right there. That we're relying on that. Now what you're seeing is, hey, if you're getting pushed and that guy's going away, go tag the hip, go cancel as many gaps as you can. Let those linebackers just kind of sit on the back and ball fit. I mean, you go more and more and more. Well, how do you make the game simpler? Well, hey, look, linebackers, all you got to do is just read the running back, right? You just got to leverage the running back, fit off of him. Okay. All you got to do is just, that's it. You just got to find that. Or in odd spacing, hey, you either have the A gap or you have the C gap, depending on flow. That's it, right? Or you only have to read this one guy. If the tight end goes away, we're all flowing with them. It's A to C that way. If the tight end goes the other way, it's A to C that way. And that's why I think with odd spacing, and that's why more teams are playing odd spacing, is really because it's easier to teach it, right? You cancel both B gaps. Your nose just has to know which way to go. You're going to have an edge defender one way, and then you have an A gap defender and a C gap defender off of your linebacker. So as we see more of these 4-down peso fronts, right? These 2-4 fronts, that's what you're going to get, is these odd spacing. That's what creepers create, right? That's what these simulated pressures create. They're just creating odd spacing, which is clogging both B gaps. Put a nose in the A gap. You have A to C player one way, and you have an edge defender on the other way. Well, that makes things really, really simple for your defense, that no matter whether you're in a bear front, you're in an under front, you might be in an over front, it doesn't matter. You're going to always fit it kind of similar because of whether you're bringing pressure, right? I'm in an over front, even spacing, right? But I'm going to bring a pressure to create odd spacing. The fits are going to stay the same. And how can you consistently get the fits the same as you evolve through your schematics? And I think that's where you're kind of seeing defensives now go is, look, we're base going to be a 3-4 bear front, type front, whatever you want to call it. But then when we go to these nickel packages or we go into these over or under sets, these even spacings, it makes everything simple for the linebackers and everything else, because look, we're canceling gaps. So even though we may be in even spacing, okay, but if I get a heavy technique, or if I get what I would call with the nose with a belly key, is whereas if I'm in a G front, right, and the center is to me, if he goes away, I close the A. Right now, I've canceled 2 gaps and I let that guard just kind of push me out of the way. It's not true odd spacing, but what we're doing is we're canceling gaps by being fluid. Like water, right? Water molds to whatever it forms. That's what we want on the defensive front is, look, I don't necessarily have to just sit there and take it. Now, obviously, if you're getting double teamed, we don't want that guy getting pushed back 6-7 yards. That's not what we want. But if I have true zone and that center's away and I'm the nose, I'm going to go close the opposite A gap, make that thing cut back. So that's what I've talked about that since cautious aggression. I learned that under Phil Bennett, who's now at North Texas. I learned that when I was at Baylor. And that's something to be looking at as you watch the NFL and the college game, is that these things are starting to become more and more common. Okay. The defensive paradox. Must stop the run to defend the pass. Applying pressure while holding coverage integrity is important. That's why we're getting these creepers, right? That's why we're getting simulated pressures. That's why we're getting more and more. Maybe it's a 5-man, it's a 5-man pressure, but we're playing half field zone to one side and man on the other side. If the defense can win in the box, they're more coverage players. That's how defenses are winning back the math, right? That's how defenses are flipping the math, is that if I can mitigate the risk of the run with as few players, let's say it's 6 players, right? And I've got my two overhangs, right? Wherever they may be, whether I'm running middle field open or middle field closed, right? If I can have these to create that 7-man spacing, now I've got all of those guys in there. By adding creepers and sims into the mix, now I'm putting more pressure on that offense to keep the running back in if it is a pass. We don't want to get rid of that and go 5 out, and then now the defense has run something that's going to play with our protection. Blitzing isn't always the best either when you playing a mobile quarterback. It's kind of like defending the flex bone. When guys ask me, hey, well, how do you defend the flex bone? The first thing I say is don't blitz it. If you start blitzing the flex bone, they're going to read the pressure. You avoided a zone, or you've made the read a lot quicker, and now they can get the ball to wherever they want it, or you're blitzing away from where they're actually attacking. With a running quarterback, it's very similar, is that you better have, whoever's blitzing better be as good of an athlete as that quarterback, or whoever you're having that's the kind of that overlap player, or kind of getting back into that zone that you just voided, better be just as good of an athlete as that quarterback. Not everybody is able to play like the Patriots did against Lamar Jackson, where they took their fastest defender and they just kind of made him a spy for Lamar Jackson and just sunk him in from depth every time. You can't necessarily do that at every level. So how do you kind of keep your base structure on early downs while also defending a running quarterback? That's why I like Tampa Bay's philosophy against Philadelphia. Change the pitch through movement to maximize coverage. And you hear this all the time. If you're going to run a light box, you have to cancel gaps somehow, whether that's by line movement, using creepers, using simulated pressures. You have to find ways to move post snap. That way you're either changing the fit, right, or changing the read for the quarterback. Okay, you're changing the fit structure post snap. Let's say you're in an over front, you send a creeper, now it's odd spacing. Okay, now you actually go into an odd front mechanics. Okay, one of the biggest things that you're going to see a tech stunt, which is the tackle first and the DN second, away from the running back, right? Because think about it, most people are still operating out of the gun. Okay, you're going to get zone action away from the running back. That D end is now going to fold back inside. That tackle, remember, being fluid, you can go ahead and push me out to the cop or the contain. You're going to see exit stunts to the running back, which is the D end kind of running that heel line, knifing inside, crossing the face of that tackle, ear holding that guard, and then that nose is just sitting there. And then as soon as that guard gets ear hold, he's using that momentum to climb and get back to contain. So it's changing the reads for the quarterback, but you're also canceling gaps inside, which allows you to then keep everybody in coverage. So it's that cancel gap mentality, less defenders near the box, allows the defense to play more middle of field open coverages, which is 7-man spacing, which if you go and you look, how are the top offenses getting treated in the NFL? It's more and more too high shell. Now, what Tampa Bay did is they would use their middle of the field close coverage to pair this with canceling gaps to really allow that linebacker to snap down on the line of scrimmage to hold the quarterback, and then using that secondary defender to kind of then get in those RPO windows near the box. So let's look at the exit stunt first. Set the front to the running back. That's the key. You want to set the front to the running back because we are then going to move away from him. Okay. Normally, the D end is going to have the quarterback when you set the 3 technique to that. What the Tampa Bay did was they said, look, we're going to let the 3 technique hold that B gap to the running back. That D end is just going to go and chase the heel line. Our linebackers, so that we can make this even spacing, odd spacing, are going to work the A and C gaps, right? So we're going to get the exit stunt away from the running back, where the D end is going to actually work across the face of the tackle. So this is what you call forcing the fit, right? You're forcing the movement of the zone action. So as they're working, he's going to rub across the face. He's going to ear hole that guard, and then the nose is going to pop out. What you're hoping happens is that the A-gap linebacker clogs that hole, right? The D end stagnates any kind of zone action that way, meaning that running back is going to have to get funneled in. You're getting chased down by the D end on the other side to give a pull read for the quarterback, and then you're putting one of your best athletes, right? You're one of your best athletes at linebacker now in charge of the quarterback. So essentially, the running back's either going to hit the A-gap and get tackled, or he's going to roll outside and meet the nose guard on the other side, right? Or the quarterback's going to pull it, and he's going to go, and then you also are going to have a linebacker right in his face as he snaps down to the line of scrimmage. So it's kind of changing it. This is why I really liked it, is because it created odd spacing from an even front, right, without actually sending a creeper. And what you're doing is they're forcing the quarterback to either carry the ball or funnel the running back into a non-advantageous area. Now, they paired this with 3 buzz. That means the safety is going to work down into the hook, the strong hook area. And so what that allowed them to do was also flood the zone in case it was RPO, or give a linebacker a little bit of help as whatever he fits one side, that safety can fit on that other side. As long as that linebacker maybe fits on the inside shoulder of the quarterback, it will bounce out to the safety on the outside shoulder. So it created plus numbers not only on the quarterback, but it created plus numbers in coverage, because it's an early down RPO that the Eagles were running. I thought it was really clever, and I thought it was a great way to defend it and to kind of create this spacing from an even front. The other thing that they did, they used a simple line movement that if any 4 down front uses to kind of change the scheme, right? Let's say I'm always setting the 3 technique, and let's say it's 4 open, right? I'm always setting the 3 technique to the running back so that I force the give, right? I want him to give it to it. That D end's going to take it. Well, the way to change the fit is through a TAM. TAM means tackle to A. Okay. The defensive tackle is going to go from a 3 technique to the A gap, and he's going to cross that center space. And so what the Bucs did, again, they set the 3 technique to the running back. They're then going to cancel the A gap with the 3 technique. The D end, because he's to the running back, he has the 3 technique moving to the A gap. There's an open B gap. He's going to crash the heel line and close the B gap. That allows then the linebacker to snap down onto the line of scrimmage. Okay. And then you now have 3 buzz paired with it, and you're now canceled any kind of snag route. Now, what I really liked is the Eagles did a lot of these like reductions. And so they brought everybody in real tight, and they kind of ran these like split zone snags. Well, what that 3 buzz does is the nickel now leverages the flat. The safety comes top down right on top of that snag. And then you have the safety valve of the corner on top in case it's a snag and go play action and they're trying to take a shot, or you get some wheel route from the flat defender. On the other side, you have the tight end running across for the split zone. you have the X receiver blocking. If he does go vertical, you have a corner, and then if he runs to run a post or some sort of a shot that way, you have a middle of the field close, right? You have a post safety. So I thought it was a great way to continue to change the fit, but while also pairing it with 3 buzz to the passing strength to then eliminate any kind of RPO. What the TAM does is it pinches the box and allows the inside linebackers to take the QB, which again goes back with the philosophy that they used on the exit stunt away from the running back. Was, hey, what we're going to do is we're going to stagnate the run front side. We're going to get into odd spacing, have the backer fit the A, have the other one snap down and take the quarterback. So these versus reductions, okay, pinching this and the 3 buzz, that allows for maximum cover downs for everybody. Everybody can cover the receiver and they can do it relatively quickly. It's great for an athlete at QB. And with 3 buzz, it floods the zone to the read side, right? And knowing that hey, it's early down, you're probably not going to get a shot, especially from a reduction. It's really hard to get shots from a reduction because you can just go middle of field close. The best thing that they've got is to do some sort of like a deep cross with a post route. Well, if you go middle of the field closed, you've got somebody guy moving that way. Any kind of over route, again, can be taken by the 3 buzz safety as he's working down, or vice versa. So it really kind of is a great way to pair it with this. Using 3 buzz on early downs is especially versus RPO teams that are running slants, they're running snags. You're putting that defender, that coverage defender, right into the RPO window, and you're flooding the box to stop the run. So let's wrap up really quickly. Blitzing a mobile quarterback can get a defense in trouble versus RPO teams. You don't want to avoid zones with a bunch of pressures. So these 6-man pressures, these 5-man cover 1 pressures, you better be able to defend, and you better have somebody spying that quarterback. And what the Buccaneers did, so the Eagles went double stack on them. And what they did is they basically took that middle of the field safety who's in charge of the quarterback, and they just kind of put him at like 8 yards on the side of the running back. So one, you have a defender that can quickly move into an RPO window. If the quarterback pulls it, you've got a speedy defender on a speedy quarterback. I thought it was a really good way to, they're playing cover 1. So if it is just pure pass and he drops back, that guy can then just shoot through the middle of the field. So what they were doing is saying, look, we're going to be in cover 1, but we're going to use this guy as a more or less a quarterback defender. And we're going to force you to not throw the RPO by his presence. And if you want to carry it, he's going to be there. So what we're forcing you to do is essentially drop back and pass versus what we think can be a decent pass rush with our 4 downs. So versus RPO teams, don't void zones with pressure. Simple front manipulation. We went over the TAM stunt, exit stunt, tech stunt. It allows you to move, right, without kind of wholesale moving parts, and it allows you to maximize your coverage. Passive pressures on early downs. These are your creepers, your sims. This would be your line movement. Something simple to change the picture post snap. I'll never forget one of the things that have always kind of been a foundational thing for me that I learned from Phil Bennett when we were at Baylor. And he said this was Bill Snyder always told him that the worst thing you can do is move your defensive lineman post snap. It changes the picture for your offensive line. It makes them work through things. Feeding and forcing is something that he picked up from Dick LeBeau, and he taught me, which is feed the run, right, if you want to force the cutback, and then force the run action if you want to stagnate things and hold them and funnel them into kind of a phone booth tackle. So using these passive pressures, right, that, hey, we're sending pressure. We're not relaxing. We're not letting you just sit back, and we're not just going to stay in our, nickel 4-2-5 over front and everybody's single gap, and we're just going to kind of just sit here and let you dictate what we're doing. We're going to force either the quarterback to run the ball because he's the worst carrier. We're going to either force the running back to run the ball because we don't want the quarterback to run it. And we're going to force, and if he does run it, he's going to go into a phone booth. He can't go anywhere. We're going to void zones in the passing. What are the RPO tags? Right? Are they a screen team? Right? Are they running bubbles or switch screens? Are they a snag team? Are they a slant team? Are they a fin team? Those are the questions that you have to ask as you look at this, and then pair that coverage and then force the front the other way, right? I'm going to pair that with this. This coverage is what we want to run. Now, what is the front structure on top of that? When facing an offense that uses space, constrain. Where is the space that they're trying to get to? Where are they trying to attack us? I want to find ways to attack that space with defenders. Survive early down RPOs, play actions, and runs. Now get them into predictable second and long, third and long. I use 2nd and 7 as a normal down because a lot of times at the high school level, that's still a rundown. Hey, if we just get 3-4 yards, now it's a manageable third down, right? So if I get 4 yards on 2nd and 7 because I ran the ball, now it's a 3rd and 3. That's a manageable down for a lot of people. In the NFL, and at the college level, 2nd and 7 is a passing down. So that's why you see kind of the difference of 2nd and 6 or 2nd and 7. I like to use 2nd and 7. Manipulate the front to force the worst runner to carry the ball. Okay. When you're looking at it, or when you're watching defense, why are they doing it that way, right? Do they want the quarterback to run the ball? In the NFL, you want that quarterback to run the ball and get hits on the quarterback, because if he gets hit really hard, what's that OC going to do? Okay, I don't want to do that. Or maybe it's Lamar Jackson and you're like, I don't want him to run the ball at all, so we're going to always give him a give read so that we can then handle the running back. When facing an offense that uses space, constrain it. Take your defender, move them to wherever they're trying to attack. And then that is where you're going to get success, especially on early downs. Survive the early down RPOs, play action, passes, and run. Get them into a 2nd and 7, 2nd and 8, 2nd and 9. I use 2nd and 7 as an early down at the high school level. If you go to the college and the NFL, it's usually 2nd and 6. The way that I look at 2nd and 7 at the high school level is a lot of times, a lot of these OCs will be like, look, if I can get 4 downs on a run right here, or we can throw a hitch screen and get 5 yards, now we're in regular down, right? That's an easy convert on third down. So that's why I use 2nd and 7. Manipulate the front to force the worst runner to carry the ball. If the quarterback's the guy that you're like, I don't want him to run, always give him a give read, because what's going to happen is he's going to get impatient. He's going to want to run the ball. He's going to pull it in numbers where you have numbers, right? If the QB is more of a runner, force him to throw outside. What Tampa Bay said was, we're not going to allow Hurts to hurt us with his legs. We're going to force him to beat us throwing the ball. We're going to flood the zones. We're going to snap that linebacker down very quickly to give him, okay, I'm going to pull it, right? Okay, I don't want to run, so I'm going to have to throw everything. And the further you can go outside and deep, the less percentage and the less likely that is going to be completed. Win first for a predictable third. Then that's when you can get creative. You can get crazy attacking them. Thanks for joining me today on another episode of the ArtofX show. Make sure to subscribe to the Substack. You can find this also on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube if you're listening on podcast form. You can find all my books that I talked about today: Cautious Aggression, Hybrids, Anger Points. You can find those all on Amazon. Make sure to pick up your templates. If you haven't picked up any templates for this year, I've got a defensive coordinator workbook. I've got a defensive coordinator call sheet, and I've also got some other things to help you through the season. So if that's something that interests you, make sure to head over to the MQ shop. Again, thank you for stopping by. And as always, follow me on Twitter at @the_coach_A.